At the time the country's COVID-19 cases peaked in Ghana, Joy News brought you a number of stories about persons who had succumbed to the virus or put up a spirited fight against all odds. Most of these stories were about adults. Today we will tell you the story of 12-year-old Georgina Lamte. She has been left with severe complications and is still on admission at the Adan Government Hospital after being infected more than a year ago. Benisa Bubeido Lansa has more.
The COVID-19 virus sneaked into Georgina's system and almost robbed her of everything, her speech and the use of her legs. Her family is not sure where she may have picked it from. She's intelligent and strong-willed, her mother says. Perhaps it's that inner strength that has kept her alive. More than a year after contracting the virus, she's still on admission at the Adan Government Hospital. Georgina is frail and her eyes look like she's got a lot to say, especially about how she spent about 4 months on a ventilator at the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, PQ, of the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. Her mother tells us about the complaint that has turned out to be the family's worst nightmare.
My daughter complained of pain in her leg when she returned from school. From there, she couldn't walk again. So I brought her here to the Adan Hospital and we were transferred to Korle Bu. We found out there that she had been infected with a virus.
I meet Dr. Owusu Setre, head of the PQ at Korle Bu. He takes me to the ward where Georgina stayed.
One of the feared complications is that sometimes the paralysis can affect the muscles that help you to breathe. And in her case, it did. So initially we had to intubate her, put her on the machine. And when the test result of COVID came in, we had to send her to UGMC. So it was at UGMC, recovered. We were able to pull the tube out. She was able to breathe. And then they referred the child back to us. And then with physiotherapy, and the child was able to go home. Then the child worsened and then came back. So when the child came back and we put her back on the machine, every time we attempted to remove the machine, the child arrested on us. I mean, by arrest, I mean, if we don't put the child back on the machine, the child was going to die. And this went on for a period. The child spent about 120 days on the ventilator. Eventually, we had to make a hole here and then put a tube so that the child could breathe through.
Keeping her on life support for that long was an act of sheer generosity. Georgina's 82,000 cedi bill is still outstanding. She had become family and the nurses and doctors just couldn't pull the plugs on her. Georgina's health has been greatly impacted. Her family is staying strong for her, but the incident has also taken a huge emotional and financial toll on them.
Things are difficult for the family. What to eat is even a problem. The doctors and nurses have really supported us. Georgina's twin brother and other sibling have stopped going to school. There's no money. I'm a widow and an orphan. I have no siblings. I'm all they have. And I'm unable to do my usual petty trading because I have to be here for her. Doctors say she may recover fully, though slowly, and be able to return to school. She was in class 5 when the sickness struck. My daughter is strong-willed and hardworking. She and her brother always received compliments from their teachers. They have always asked me to pray for them so they would finish school and take care of me.
Detecting COVID-19 can be very tricky, even to the trained eye. The global medical community is still working hard to understand the virus, especially how it presents among children.
The first child that we diagnosed in this unit of COVID-19 was on this one with an intubation, a ventilator on. Unfortunately, we lost that child. This child was about 8, 9 years, and it happened around the time that we were on lockdown. And they were observing all the protocols according to parents. This child presented with what we called rabies-like syndrome, like when a dog with rabies bites somebody, the way they behave, aggressive, spitting at each other, trying to attack us and everything. And parents were so sure that this child had not gone out to be bitten by a dog. They didn't have a dog in their house, and yet that child was exhibiting those symptoms. Something very baffling. So we decided, okay, there's a new kid on the block, why don't we investigate for coronavirus infection? And voila, when the results came, it was COVID. Those that come in with severe conditions, some of them come in fact, most of them come with what we call the neurological deficit or manifestation, brain things.
While Georgina's family waits for a miracle, the WHO has warned of a possible third wave in Ghana. Health officials are racing against time to stay on schedule with vaccinations. The scary multiple waves of this pandemic continue to traverse borders. Everyone is at risk.
Babies lost, children left with physical disabilities for life, all because they contracted the deadly coronavirus. We can't say this enough. Please, try your best. Stay safe, observe the protocols, and that's how you can stay alive in this season. Bennett Abubedu-Lamsa
for Joy News.
Let's get more on this. We've been joined by virologist at the University of Ghana Medical School, Reverend Professor Sego. I'm grateful for your time, Prof. Why would a virus known to largely cause flu-like symptoms and at worst breathing difficulties create such complication for this young girl?
Thank you and good evening. Sorry for my technical issues with my video. Yes. Can you hear me? Hello?
Prof, we can hear you, yes.
Okay. So the thing is that normally, if when you get a viral infection, you're a target organ. So the idea is that the virus, when the virus enters your body, it normally has a specific organ it wants to race for so that it will destroy. And that's where the changes occur, or that's where the disease occurs. Technically, they will say pathological changes occur. So most viruses, some viruses can have multiple organs that they can affect. But there are also viruses that will normally have common organs that they affect, but will have the capability of also moving out to other organs to cause disease. A typical example, which is SARS-like, is mumps virus. Mumps virus will normally affect glandular tissue, but can also find its way into your nervous system. So it's not strange that you can have viruses going across barriers into organs that they don't normally find themselves in to cause disease. Again, sometimes it is actually the effect of the infection. So it may not be the virus itself, but the actual effects of the infection that may actually cause that condition in an individual. So, for example, I checked when you called, and I found out that, look, there's been a case which has been recorded of a metabolic stroke-like episode, which means like some sort of stroke-like things in condition in children that is caused because of metabolic deficiencies that has occurred in a SARS-CoV-2 infected patient. These may be very rare things that may happen, and sometimes may be because the child itself is predisposed to a condition. It probably was an underlying condition that existed that was not known. And because of the infection or the inflammation, it may have pushed it to where it is now.
Are we then correct to still stand by the assertion that COVID-19 doesn't really cause harm to children?
I think so. I think that there is no overwhelming evidence, at least as far as I'm concerned. I know in the US they said cases may have risen in children, but of course if you are vaccinating adults, it may push it to the rate of children. So it's not. I still think that we don't have any cause. I haven't seen any evidence yet to show that we have any cause for alarm. But if we want to be scientific about it, maybe what we can do is just to go to a pediatric center and probably take X-rays or CT scans of children over a period, just to see whether we have what we can see on the ground as a baseline, to see whether we have any conditions in children. But I've also heard that some of the conditions presenting in children for SARS are very unspecific. Like you're saying, it may be respiratory, but it may be causing other unspecific reactions. So it may be a tall order, but I don't think there's any evidence yet. I haven't seen any evidence yet suggesting that it's currently a big problem in children. This may be an isolated case, just like the one I saw earlier on the metabolic stroke-like symptoms. It may be an isolated case because the child itself may have some predisposing conditions already.
I'm grateful for your time. Reverend Professor Kwame Nsegu is a virologist